I'm a bad boy.
G'day guys, today I'm going to be going through two aircon actuator motors. This is a common point of failure on the Ford Rangers and Mazda BT-50s. They don't necessarily fail, but they make a lot of weird noises. So I will show you the before and after as well, just in case you're not sure what I'm talking about. I'll go through all the part numbers and the costs. We'll just have a look at all the tools needed and how to take them out and replace them. If you are wondering where to get these parts for cheap, then one thing I do want to make note of is that whatever you do, avoid buying from Mazda completely for any part, not just for these parts, but the markup on Mazda products is ridiculous. For the BT-50, this car is a Ford Ranger, buy from Ford. I bought from Jefferson Ford, who were the cheapest that I found, and the links will be in the description as well for these two part numbers from Jefferson Ford. Both of these parts I ordered for less than $100. Whatever you do, don't buy from Mazda or a Mazda affiliated workshop. For the exact same HVAC actuator motors, they sometimes charge up to $190 for a $30 to $40 part. So if you're buying these actuator motors or any other part, always go for a Ford website or a Ford dealership or somebody selling Ford parts on eBay or Amazon, because they'll give you the proper price for it. Never go to a Mazda affiliated workshop if you want a good price. As I said in the intro, there are two separate issues here that we're fixing at the same time. Two separate motors, both to do with the climate control or the air recirculation. The first motor that we're going to change out is on the passenger side, just behind the glove box, and the issue is it makes the following sounds. Now you can hear that knocking sound, and it does get quite annoying, and it sort of just comes and goes at random. That is to do with the motor not being able to find its home position because there is dirt and grit on the electrical contacts. Now you can actually remove the motor, open it up and clean it with contact cleaner and then put it back together, but these parts are really cheap, so I just thought I would buy brand new parts, keep the olds as spares. Worst case scenario, I can always go back and clean either the old ones or the new ones that I'm putting in if for some reason this happens again in a short amount of time. It's a really common problem and it is annoying to see. It's quite poor quality control from Ford and Mazda, but at least this one is easy to fix. The one that we purchased for the passenger side here is only $45.23. The part number is AB3919E616AA. So this is what we will be replacing it with, and you can see here are those clips. You can undo these to open it if you want to clean out the actual motor electrical contacts, but we're just going to be unbolting and putting a new one. You can see there the three holes for the three mounting points, and you can see the information there on the motor. This is for the inlet air. One thing I want to point out is that there is what appears to be a cog missing. That is the key, so this only goes in a certain way. To access this, we just need to remove the glove box, which is quite easy to do. Just pinch in the sides. And you can see already where the air inlet is there with the cabin filter. So here's the cabin filter, and there's the white electrical plug. That is our actuator motor that we'll be replacing. So here's that actuator motor. We can take this white clip out. There are 3 bolts or screws. They are Phillips head. Pinch the sides here to pull this plug out, and that just controls this inlet vent here, which we'll come back to in a second, because we can move it around because we need to line up this keyway. I'm using a socket set just because the screwdriver is a little bit too long, and I take out this plug here because it just gets in the way. Motor pulls out, compare it to the new one that we've got, make sure they are exactly the same, which they are, so we've got no dramas here. And slide the motor in till the keyway slides in, and then you can twist it around to get the bolts to line up. This one just controls this inlet air from recirculation to fresh air. And don't forget to put both of your plugs back in if you removed both of them. That's it for that one. That's the easier of the two. We've got heaps of access there. Once we take the glove box out, it's really easy to get tools in there, and it's really easy to locate, remove and replace. The one that we're about to do now is on the driver's side, and it's a bit more difficult to access. What this motor does is it mixes for climate control, so it controls the cold and hot air coming in to get the right temperature. The issue that we find with this motor is the following sound. Now this noise is the more annoying of the two. It happens for quite a long time sometimes. It happens every time you change the temperature, but also just as you're driving along and it tries to manage the climate control in the car, the motor will activate and it will make that noise as you're driving along. In a weird sort of way, you do kind of get used to it and forget about it, but for $36.30, it's definitely worth just changing it out. So the part number for this one is UC9P61A60, just another actuator motor. So you can see with this one as well, we have the 3 mounting points. Again, on the front here, you'll see you have the keyway on that cogged wheel. So we need to line this up so that everything works properly and fits back together. Now this bit's going to be specific to this model of car, but in general it'll be the same. We're taking trim off. Each car will have different amounts of trim. The actuator motor's just behind here. The more trim we get off, the better vision we're going to have. So this is a 2015 XTR badge BT-50. Normally the trim will be Torx bits, normally T25 or maybe Phillips head screw. To get the front off, you can pull from the top, or you can pull from the bottom, get the climate control module out, because the climate control module holds in the upper bit of trim. So for this one, I'll start from the bottom and just pop that out like that, undo this clip for the climate control if you want to get it out the way. The other way I normally do it is starting either side from the top, pull towards the back, and the whole thing will pop out. Once you got all this out, there's just a Torx bit here, T25, and get yourself a socket set or a Torx bit set to undo all this. We've got to pull this up here because there's another Torx bit holding this silver trim in. Again, this is just with the trim removal tool. Should pop this up, no dramas. And then we get access to this T25 here. Once that's out, pull this plastic trim out. This one here pulls out as well, no screws. Underneath in the footwell here, we got another T25 bit to do here. Above that is a Phillips, so we'll take that out as well. On the other side is another Phillips head screw. Take that out, pull that cover out, and we've got better vision. And now we can see that actuator motor just up here. Again, 3 mounting bolts, kind of hard to access. This is a foot vent with a little clip on it there, so we can remove that and sort of twist this foot vent off out the way, pull this bigger pipe down towards the floor, and then we get better access to the bottom screw of that actuator motor. Now that top bolt is easy, just get a flat or a Phillips screwdriver in there and Torx T25 to undo here to move this air vent down. The reason we need to move this is to access that bottom bolt, so you sort of have to bend the plastic a bit and then you can see that bottom screw there. So this one again, not too difficult to access. It's the one around the back side that's the hardest, but even this one, just want to point out, we can't actually get a straight run at it. So if you're having trouble with a Phillips head, go to a flat blade like I've done here. Just helps you loosen it because it won't camber out of the screw head and ruin it. This one at the back, you can do it with a Phillips, and the shorter the better if you cleared this little bracket here, but I did manage to get it out like this. Otherwise, switch back to a small flathead because, like we said before, it won't camber out as much and you can start it, but you only do a quarter turn at a time. So with the flat blade, you only want to be on the vertical angle, and once it starts to spin and it's trying to push horizontally, then you got to stop and do another quarter turn. Otherwise, you will just ruin the head of the screw or the flat blade itself. So it is a bit of a struggle, but I've got the 3 screws out and the motor just pulls out pretty easily here. Comes with a little white guiding pin bracket as well, so we just got to move that over to the new one and then fit it all back together, back how it was in the car. The keyway isn't exactly the same, but you can get the bracket lined up and then you can twist it a little bit to get the bolts lined up. Now, after changing out the driver's side, I turned the car back on and I found out that it was still making the noise. This was very confusing for a second, but then I remembered that this is because we have 2 climate control actuators in this car. It has dual zone climate control. So the mixing of the hot and cold air can be controlled independently from the driver and the passenger side up to a difference of about 4 degrees before they start to buffer each other the same direction. So I had a look on the passenger side and I did see another actuator for the climate control, as well as a 4th actuator, which is for the airflow direction. So when you want to direct the airflow to your feet, to your face, or to the windscreen for demisting, there is another actuator for that as well. So if we go back on the glove box side and we look up here, you'll see another actuator motor up the top here. This is for the airflow direction. Down lower, we actually have another actuator. This is the culprit. This is the one that was making all the noise. I unplugged this and I unplugged the air distribution one as well. Plugged them in one at a time just to see what was making the noise and figured out that this one was the culprit. We do have better access here because we're in the glove box compartment, but you will need to drill a hole to get this bottom bolt out. Same way as you would if you want that top motor for the redistribution to come off. You need to drill this hole here. I originally drilled this one, but couldn't get it far enough across on the curved face here. It's better to drill on this straight face and then angle towards the motor. So you have to drill a hole to get that one off, and you have to drill a hole to get that one off. If that top motor is damaged and you need to remove it, just be careful when you're putting it all back in, because you see that white bit of bracketry, that is a ring that controls 3 different vents, and it has 3 different guiding pins that need to go into 3 separate tracks on the back side of that white guiding pin ring. So when you're taking it apart and putting it back together, you need to get those guide pins, all 3 of them, into that ring again before you put it all back together. So you can see one of the actuator arms there, that's for the windscreen. So that will open and close the airflow to the windscreen as you put on demisting. And then there is another one that's actually behind the motor completely that you can't get to unless you take that motor out. We'll just have a look at what it sounds like now. You might be able to hear that slight noise. So you see it still makes a slight noise because this is the one that I took from the driver's side. It's been repurposed here. This and the driver's side actuator are all the same part number. I only bought the one brand new one for the driver's side, not realising that I actually had this one here and that this was the one that was actually faulty. So this one is kind of on the way out, makes a slight noise, but it's nothing compared to what it was before. In the centre here we have our redirection, so you can have the feet and the demister, or you can do the feet and the face, but not face and demister. And when I go through these buttons, you can see that white ring that moves, and that is altering the direction of flow. Over here we have our recirculation button. Now this controls the first actuator we did on the passenger side at the air inlet. So when we press this, you see there's no hunting anymore. So recirculation on, it blocks the inlet. When I turn it off, the vent comes back down and takes air through the cabin filter from the outside of the car. No hunting for position, it moves straight up and down without that knocking noise. So the top motor over here is to do with your direction. The bottom one is your climate control for the passenger. The recirculation is the one at the inlet here. That is the one that you can clean to fix, because it's not the motor that is buggered, it is just the contacts. And then the other actuator is this one. If you have one that's faulty, unplug all of them, plug them in one at a time, play around with the controls on both sides, find out where the noise is coming from, and then just replace whichever one is faulty. The 2 actuators for the airflow direction and the other climate control actuator, they're the exact same part number. This one motor does the 3 actuators. It does the 2 climate controls for a dual zone setup, and it does the airflow direction as well. The actuator for the inlet flap, that is a different style of motor that we've already gone through. Now this is the one that was making all the noise. I did go through all the effort of taking this apart and cleaning it all out. It doesn't make a difference. With the knocking noise, where the motor and the flaps not finding its position properly, that's fine, you can clean it out because that will assist the contacts, but the motor itself is still in good condition. When they start making this grinding noise, it's not repairable, just replace it. Now with these other 2 motors on the passenger side, you actually do need to drill a hole if you want to remove them, because the 3rd mounting bolt is right behind the bracket and it's so close to the bracket you can't even fit a socket set with a Phillips head attachment in between there. Still, this is a lot cheaper than people who claim to have been quoted $2,000 plus to remove the dash and fix these sorts of motors. Just drill 2 holes in that bracket, you can get these motors out, and they're $30 or $40, whatever they are. So it's a nice, easy replacement. It is better access in the sense that the glove box comes out. It's just annoying that you have to drill 2 holes, but drilling these 2 holes is not going to make a difference to the strength of that bracket. So after all that, I actually stuffed up because I didn't do proper testing before replacing the one on the driver's side. It was the passenger side one that was actually faulty. What I could have done was actually unplug them all and plug them back in one at a time before I started the work, but it doesn't bother me because I just repurposed the driver's side one to the passenger side, which will be easier to access in the future. The driver's side one is probably the worst access because it is in a really awkward spot behind that bracket and up high. So you have to bend your arm in weird positions, and with the pedals in the footwell, it makes it less comfortable and it gives you less room to get your head in there. In regards to tools that you need, all you really need is probably a trim removal set and a really good socket set. I'll link in the description the socket set that I use. It is 106 pieces from Barco, comes with all the Torx bits, comes with angle adapters, different length extensions, all your Phillips, flathead, and obviously all your sockets, as well as spanners. It's one of those things that you purchase once and then you have everything you need to work on a car. Otherwise, get yourself a set of screwdrivers, which most people will have anyway. And if you want, you can buy a separate Torx bit set. It's just a little more difficult than the socket set because you don't have that ratcheting action in tight spaces. Now that driver's one that I did take out and replaced on the passenger side, it is on its way out. There is a slight grinding noise there, but it's nowhere near as annoying or obtrusive as the one that I took out from down low on the passenger side was. So it is a massive improvement. In the end, we've actually gone from the 2 actuators that I thought we were replacing to having a look at all 4 of them. Hopefully this has helped someone else figure out how their aircon system works, and fault finding should be a lot easier now, knowing where all the parts are and how to access them. Thanks for watching. Ranges in the BT-50s, which is quite noisy. That's where the actual motor. The 2, we've got nice big axe. So the motor that we just play it. Now this, and I can always go out. So if you're buying these or a foot, and the passenger can. Now if you're and clean it, which makes it up, buy a separate Torx bit kit.